My friends, greetings and salutations. Before this video starts, I wanted to say a quick thank you because this channel has reached 100 subscribers. That's pretty cool. I feel like that's the first little milestone for a channel. And so I wanted to thank you very much. I am very grateful that 100 of you have liked my channel enough to keep watching. That's pretty awesome. It's always been a dream of mine to be able to produce content that people enjoy and that people get value out of. So, and to be able to make money from it, to be completely honest. So that's I'm 1/10 of the way there. That's pretty awesome, Yeah. I just want to say this quick thank you before this video starts, and enjoy the rest of the video. Okay. Welcome, my Padawans. Today is the first educational video I've done on this channel, so I'm pretty excited. I've prepared some materials for today's lesson. The lesson today is how to add a Mexican basket weave, or sometimes called a Spanish braid, to your leather projects. And so I've prepared a couple of example pieces. I've prepared this piece, which is a much more spaced out piece. That's just for you to get familiar with the overall pattern and whatever. And then I prepared this piece, which is a proper to-scale piece of something that I would put on my leather products. So we'll get to this piece very soon. Today I will be using Weaver Leather's lacing needles. The nice things about these, they've got threads at the end of them instead of a clip. So what you do is you cut a taper at the end of your lace, and then you screw this lacing needle on, and it really grips on there and stays on. So here we go. Okay, so first thing is attaching the needles. I've got shears here. You can use whatever cutting tool you want. So you're just going to cut a taper, looking something like that. And then you're going to take the needle, and sometimes this takes a couple of cuts to get the right size of taper. So if it doesn't grip on right away, then don't worry, just cut a new slightly thicker or slightly thinner taper and just keep trying. So I will usually have an extra probably 5 to 10 inches of lace just to allow for a few cuts of the taper. But it looks like this one is going to go on right away, and so it's threaded on there really nicely. Now we are going to do the same for the other end. And while we're preparing this, I actually want to tell you guys a story. I used to be so afraid of higher detailed stuff. That's why I started with the very, very, very minimalist items on my shop. And so I was very, very afraid of it. But then once I started doing it, I realized that all of the complex techniques are actually made up of the same few simple skills. But when the technique is done, it looks a lot more complicated and difficult than it actually is. That you'll see if you're a leather worker and you're getting started, you'll see that a lot of aspects of leatherworking are like that. All right, so I've got my lace. And in terms of length, you should do 10 times the length of your braid that you're going to do. So this is, I think, 7 inches or 7.5 inches. So I've cut roughly 80 inches of lace for this. And if you look back, I think I showed a short of how I cut the lace. I can go into bigger detail on that in a later video if you guys want. Okay, so you're going to start from the back, and you're just starting at one end, and you're just going to feed both ends through. And now, depending on the leather that you're using for your lace, you might create a lot of fuzzies. Don't worry. You can just brush them off later. You might want to wear an apron while you're doing it, though. Now, I'm sitting in a way where I should be able to avoid getting a bunch of fuzzies on myself, but, you know, kind of comes with the job description. Okay, so now, once you have both ones through, you're just going to go ahead and equalize. And that basically means you're going to pull the same amount of lace through each hole. And you've basically got half on one end, half on the other. And so actually this is a perfect time. You see how this is all twisted and whatever. Make sure that the flesh side is always down before you complete one of the braids. So for each hole, go slow. It's worth going slow. Slow and steady wins the race. Haste makes waste. Go slow. Make sure the flesh side is always on the bottom. Now, unless you want to use the flesh side, in which case, make sure the top grain is always on the bottom. It depends on what kind of braid what kind of look you're going for. Regardless, I've got these pieces equalized out, and it doesn't really matter which side you start with. I never really pick a particular side. I just take a side and I start. So now I'm going to do this very slowly. It's very, very easy to remember. And once you do one or two braids, you can always come back to this video. Once you do one or two braids, you'll be able to remember this like the back of your hand. Okay? So, from my perspective, it might be reversed from your perspective. I don't know. But I'm starting with the right end. So this is the left end here. I'm starting with the right end, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go across from the first hole on the right to the second hole on the left. And I'm going to pull all the way through. Get my shears out of the way. I'm going to pull all the way through and make sure that's nice and tight. Now, I'm using a somewhat thin piece of leather here. So if this bunches up, you know, you can always just kind of flatten it out. And this is just an example. I would probably use a thicker piece if I'm doing a lot of braiding. Okay, so regardless, Nicola, stop rambling. You've got it through that second hole on the side that you're not starting on. So now you're going to come back on the back side. You're going to come back through your starting hole. All right? You're going to pull through, and I think I didn't actually mention the hole size. So after I do this, I will mention what the hole size is and what I like to follow. Now, obviously, everyone's going to be slightly different. All right, so you see you've made that first cross like that as well. Brush off any fuzzies. Okay, so hole size real quick, and I'll get into spacing when I move on to the second piece. Hole size, this is an 1/8 inch lace, so I like to use an 1/8 inch hole because usually there will be 2 pieces of lace going through every hole when we're done. And it looks a lot better when it's tight like this. Whereas if you use a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch, you're going to have loose fitting laces in there. And for one, it's not going to look as done. You're going to be able to see the holes. But 2, that lace is going to more easily work itself out, and eventually you might have to redo it. Whereas if you use smaller holes, again, usually I like to use the size of hole that matches the size of lace, or width of lace rather. Then not only will the lace stay tight in there, but it will also not show a lot of sun, so to speak. All right, got to take a little sip of my Schlevel. Little slurp of my kaffa for all you Serbians out there. Živeli. Hope you guys are enjoying a Schlevel while you're learning this. All right, so we're back in the starting hole. Now we're going to come down to the third hole. So 1, 2, 3. Coming down on the third hole on the non-starting side. So for me, that's the left side. And again, I'm just making sure this doesn't get twisted around. Okay, so now you're going to come up, and now you're just going to follow this pattern. So you're going to end up going from, what is this, a third hole on the side you didn't start on to the second hole of the side you did start on. And now we've just created our pattern for our first end. So just making sure that this lace goes in here correctly. Okay. Now you're just going to repeat this pattern going all the way to the down to the end. So I'll go over one more with you, and then I'll probably time lapse this for the rest of it so you can just see it sped up. Okay. So I'm in the second hole here, and I'm going into the fourth hole on the other side. I'm just making that cross, or that diagonal, we'll say. All right. Then you go on the back, and you go, and you make that, you basically just match it. And again, feel free to replay this beginning part as many times as you guys need. When I first started doing these braids, I had to look at the same tutorial video probably 25 times before I committed the pattern to memory. So no judgment here. All right, now I'm going to continue this to the end, and it'll probably be time-lapsed. I don't think I'm going to cut it, but maybe you'll hear my rumbling. Hoppity boppity scoopity bop. Okay. Now, we're to the end here. And so now I'm going to show you how to finish this off. And it's actually going to mirror what was happening in the front here. Now, a little side note, you see this is kind of wibbly wobbly. That's because this leather is very pliable. When I go to the properly spaced one, it doesn't really matter for this one because this one is just for the pattern. When I go to the properly spaced one, I'm probably going to quickly glue something to the back of it, probably just another piece of the same leather, so that it's a little firmer. So that is a good side note. See, I'm learning just as you're learning. If you use a more pliable, softer, more supple leather, you should double it up, because otherwise you'll get this kind of weird scrunching up type deal. All right. Regardless, we're at the end here. So you see I'm on to my last hole. Well, no, actually. I've gotten to the last hole on one side. I'm coming up, and I've just repeated this same pattern on this side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through that last hole again. And that's it. I will show you what to do once you have the other end in a minute. Okay, so now we're starting at this end. Now this is where the braid comes in, okay? You can choose whether to go under the first one or over the first one. I think under looks better. But basically you're going to go under, over. So you got this first piece of lace here, and you're taking your other one that you've had hanging about while you're doing this first one, and you're going to go under the first and over the second. And I like to pull this all the way through before I go to the back side. All right, so you're making this little cross hatch design. Now, you're going to go through the second hole on the other side. Pull all the way through. Sometimes you get the lace a little twisted, so you got to make sure that it's correct, okay? So now you're on the back side, and now you're going to make an X on the back side, and you're going to go back through the starting hole, just like so. All right, you're starting to see we're just doing the same, it's the same concept, except on the second way down, you're going over, under, or under, over, rather than just going across. So now you've made that X here, and you've got an X on this side. Now we're going to go on to the next hole, but since I went under this first line on the first time around, I'm going to go over this one and then under this one. So, and then over the next one. All right. And now since we went in this hole first, we're going to go in this hole next. Make sure this is twisted right. Again, this is bunching up. Before I get on to the next one, I'll glue something so you can see it properly. Okay, so now you've went over, under, over on the second one. Now you're on the back side. And now you're going to come back. You don't have to worry about over, under, whatever on the back side. You're going to come back and then come out or through the second hole now. So you went through the first hole, now you're down here, and you're going to come back up through the second hole. Oh, again, make sure that whichever side of the lace you're using for the braid is always up. All right. Now I'm going to show you one more time how to do an X on both sides. Then I'm going to time lapse it again till I get to the end, and I'll show you how to finish it. Then we'll move on to the better one. Just the properly spaced and thick one. Okay. So, as you can see, I went under this one on my previous time around. So I'm going to go over and then under and then over. So I'll show you here in a minute. Essentially, you're just alternating. So then you start to get a look of, you see how this line is going like here, and it goes over, under. Then this one goes under, over, under, over, so on and so forth. You get the gist of it. And that's what starts to create the braid. Now, obviously, this is very heavily spaced out. So you see the black leather through here. On this next piece, I've done the spacing properly, how you would do it on an actual piece, and it'll look very nice and tight. Okay, so you're coming through. Now you're on the back side. And now you're just going to make another X and come through, and you're just repeating this pattern over and over and over again for however long your braid is on your particular project. And before I time-lapse this, I actually wanted to say, if you think whether I'm over-explaining something or whether I need to be more clear, let me know with a comment, because this is, again, my first educational video. I've never really done anything like this before. And so I want to make sure that I'm explaining everything to a degree where you can properly understand it and make use of this tutorial. So just let me know, and because I'm always trying to improve as time goes on. All right, I'm going to time-lapse this and complete this, and then I'll show you how to finish this braid. Then we will move on to the other one. All right, we're at the end here. I'm ready to go through my last hole. So since I went under this on my last one, I'm going to go over, under, over. I'm going to go through my last hole. Get this other end out of here. Get out of here. All right, come back, do that hole, complete the X. Now, I'm going to just repeat that again. So I went under this one on the last one. So I'm going to go over, under, and then through. All right, now this is where you have a choice of how you would like to finish this. You can finish it in a way where you have the laces, the ends of the lace dangling out, or you can finish it in a way where you have it tucked in the back and just hidden away. On this one, since it's so spaced out, it'll be really easy to demonstrate. I'm going to tuck them in. Obviously, on this one, because it's so spaced out, it would come out, but typically you would have this the holes much closer together, and so it will never come out. Okay, now this is a part where I kind of do this just because I like the way it looks and I feel better about the ends of it. I'm going to go parallel. So now there's going to be 3 or 4 pieces of lace going through these end holes. Okay, now if you need to use an awl or something to open up that hole a little bit at the end, you can, because it does tend to get pretty tight in there. Okay, so I'm going across, and then across again. Okay, so I'm kind of creating a bar at the end here. I think that really ends off the lace really, really nicely, or the braid rather. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with the other end. Now this is where, if I had it on me, I would probably use a an awl because it would really open the hole up. But I think I can force this. Well, maybe not. Okay, give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm back. I've got my sewing awl. Where was I? Yes, longer one. Okay, so if the hole is already really tight, which, I mean, there's 3 pieces of lace going through here already, you can just open it up a little bit, and you don't have to worry because that hole will close again. So now you're just going to feed this through. There we go. Feed it through. Again, you don't have to do this bar method, let's call it, if you don't want to. It's not really necessary for finishing the braid. I just like the way it looks. Okay. Pull that through. I hope I've been in frame this entire time. That's happened one too many times. I've made an entire video and realized that 90% of it is out of the shot. Okay, so this is the tucked in method. Not to be confused with the other tucked in method. We're not going to talk about that in this video. Okay, so you take your piece of lace and you do this for each end. I would actually say, well, no, you can do this like this. What you're going to do is you're going to take the lace and you're just going to tuck it underneath your X's. You can do, let's say that's 2. You can do 2. Again, this is super spaced out. On the next one, you'll see it's going to be much tighter. You're going to have that go through, and then you can just trim off the end just like that. And when you actually set the braid, which I will show at the end of the video, that will flatten down and will completely conceal those ends. So it'll look almost like a mystery braid because visually you won't really be able to see a finishing or a beginning and an end to the braid. You're going to trim it off. And there you go. That is your basic Mexican basket weave pattern. So as you can see, the basic pattern, you can see the weave. Again, very spaced out. This next one we're about to do is going to be much, much tighter and cleaner. All right, let's move on. Brush off all the fuzzies. This is actually a good chance to show how to take these laces or these needles off. You basically just unscrew it like you're unscrewing a cap on a bottle. And eventually it'll come off. You can throw those ends away or keep them. I don't know what you would do with them, but hey, you know what? Maybe you guys are more creative than I am and you can come up with a use. If you do, let me know because the amount of lace ends that I create is ridiculous. Okay. So we've got this piece, and in between shots, I went ahead and doubled this up. So instead of being a 4 to 5 ounce, this is more like an 8 to 10 ounce. And so it's going to be much firmer. You're not going to have that bunching up. Okay. I have a fresh piece of lace. I really like the color contrast of black leather and red lace. To me, it looks super clean when it's really, really close together. And I guess now is a good chance to talk about today's sponsor. No, I don't have a sponsor. Today's, the spacing. That's what, my brain is not working. I may have cut this taper a little too. Okay, the spacing. So, this lace, like I said, is an 1/8 inch lace. So for the spacing, you want to do 2 or 3 times the width of your lace. So these holes, I believe, are 3/8 of an inch apart, going this way and this way. So you'll basically have series of squares. And yeah, it's pretty simple. And then you use the same size hole that matches your width of lace, like I said in the beginning of the video. We have been very close to the end. Went under this one and over this one, so now we're going to go over, under, and over. There and Back Again by Bilbo Baggins. A Hobbit's Tale. And then through. Pull it, make sure it's not twisted into oblivion. If your lace is twisted, if your lace is going to oblivion, then you've done something wrong. Just a helpful little tip. Coming back through this hole. Again, I'm not going into super detail because there's no use in doing that twice in the same video. Okay. Radio. Okay, this really nice, created this very nice X. So now again, you're alternating how you go under and over. Okay, so now you've got this really nice shape. Now you're going to go in this last hole here. Okay. Okay. Now you got the two pieces. Now, here is where, if you wanted, you could just go ahead and tuck these through here. And then when you set it, it would be a very clean, and you basically have this on the front. Personally, I like to have the ends dangling out. I think it looks really cool. So that's what I'm going to do for this demonstration. So you're going to take each end, and don't be afraid to make use of an awl if necessary, which I'm going to just do preemptively because I already know I'm not going to be able to get this through here otherwise. You're going to come through to the front side here. And make sure it's not twisted. That's probably one of the biggest things that shows that you know what you're doing and that you've taken your time is if your lace is perfect in terms of which side is showing. All right, you can pull that taut. Now you've got this end. Now you're going to do the same thing on the other end. Take my awl. Cool story about this awl. It's actually a little bit of a family heirloom, kind of. I believe my mom told me that her aunt, or her mom, but I think her aunt, maybe it was her mom. Basically, they use this exact same awl to help put buttons on these little cloth stuffed teddy bears that they would make when she was a little girl, and she's had this awl ever since then, and I started using it for leathercraft, and so I always try and use this when I can. I like things like that, things that have been passed down that one day when I have my own kids, I can pass them down to them. All right, story time is over. The fortress is taken. It is over. All right. Now, you've got these ends hanging out, and that's actually all you need to do. Now you're just going to clip them at your desired length. And that's it. That is your completed braid. You can kind of bring it down a little bit, and I'm going to grab a mallet real quick so I can show you how to set this properly. Now, you can use a tack hammer, which is, I think, I would say the proper tool to be used. However, I'm not that fancy. This is a mallet or a hammer that I made out of some pipe fitting parts and an old shovel handle. I cut the shovel handle and then screwed these on to both ends. This works. I like the way it looks personally. As long as you've got a flat end here. All you're going to do, very, very simply, you're just going hammer it down. On both sides. And there you go. That is very clean and tight. There you go. That is how you do a Mexican basket weave. Thank you so much for playing my game. Thanks again for 100 subscribers, guys. I'll see you in the next one.